Real talk for the bold, bruised, and built to last. Welcome to the Built This Way podcast with Patricia Mullen.
All right, so why do I talk about strategy when I don't literally even talk about my business? Hardly ever. I kind of figured like today, I should do that and maybe moving forward a little bit more. So as you join me in my dining room studio in the Deep South, maybe I can make it a little bit fun. You can learn something cool about it too, right? Because every business needs a strategy, and I talk about it until my eyes want to explode, or until my face turns blue. And it sounds really boring, and it sounds really trendy, and people say, "Oh, I'm a strategist," blah. But I actually am a strategist. I did strategic planning, or I do sometimes, for municipalities. And I guess I'll start off with a cool old school story from my past. So there's this old guy. He's an old guy now. I kind of was then. His name is James Hedinger, and he is a legend. So imagine back in like the Mad Men Day eras, just as tall, just as handsome. And then, now he's like in his 70s with just same amount of swagger, but genius when it comes to strategic planning. And he's still around, lives up in Michigan, and he is actually the recipient, just to tell you like how badass this guy is, of the Order of the Rising Sun Award, which is given by Japan. It's like one of the highest honors that you can give. The level he got was like gold and silver, I'm pretty sure. I had to look up the article just a little bit ago before I knew I was going to mention him, just because it's like, how is that the guy that taught me? So like how I got hooked up with this guy is I used to run a chamber of commerce, and how that happened is I was sitting there, literally. I started this job because, connections and knowing people. A friend of mine who I started shooting with after going to a networking event, became shooting buddies, and her and I would go, and we would go shoot at the local shooting range. A couple of years later, I almost bought that one too, by the way. And we became pals. And one day I was all in my head. I was working in radio, I hating life at the time. And she offered me my dream gig, which was like wild. We were at lunch and I'm sitting there going, I'm so sick of blah, blah, blah. 30 years old. I'm at the mall on a, Friday night going, what the hell's wrong with my life? And she's like, shut up. I want you to do networking and events for the chamber. I was like, what? And then a couple months later, the two organizations that I was working in, they were sister organizations. One did the economic development and one was the chamber, and that's where I worked. Well, the ladies or the people that were working there did not work there anymore after one day. What a way to elevate your career. I was freaking there, man, just because I was sitting there. So I'm sitting at this chamber of commerce and trying to figure out what the hell to do, going through all the political stuff, people's bad voicemails and things. And this guy who the big hitters in town, the big corporate beast, hired from their board to basically come and be the interim director, was the only dude that gave a shit that would come and check on me every once in a while. And that was Jim Hedinger, or James. So, just to be like, hey, how's chamber going? Like, it seems to be okay. As I'm, drowning in work and events and things. But, it ended up being really cool. Years later, when I was unemployed and trying to figure out how to start my business and things, he used to get a hold of me every once in a while and ask me to go for a beer. And, he did. And he's like, hey, let's go for a beer. And then said, hey, I'm looking for a partner, someone that does what you do. I had been doing planning and strategy for businesses and marketing companies for years, over 15 years at this point or more. And he had been doing strategic planning for all of these, municipalities, cities, organizations. He put Battle Creek, Michigan on the map back before when the fort, I think it was Custer, shut down. That happens. People tend to go, oh no, what happens to all the different jobs and the restaurants and all this stuff. And this guy helped the city. There's a movie about it. They do not mention him. It just came out. It's on Netflix. Frosted, I think it was. But they never talked about the dude with the ideas to say, like, you've got these cereal companies here and all this stuff. Maybe put that on the map and make it. So Battle Creek, Michigan is called Cereal City. And if you go there's all this Kellogg's stuff. And I think there might be posts there too. But anyways, he's like one of the dudes that helped make all that come to fruition. If you go to that city now, it's a beautiful place. It used to be kind of one of those places. And now it's, or at least it was last time I was there, it was like 10 years ago. The sidewalks are gorgeous and they're very intentional and all that stuff. But anyways, that's Jim. And when he asked me to hang out and he gave this kid a shot when nobody else would, and I was unemployed, which that's how some of us have to start our own businesses. I was I got the pleasure of learning from the legend and how to do strategy. And now I do it for companies, right? I still talk to him quite often. I still get to do projects with him. I get the pleasure of technologying things for him. And we've had actually a handful of really great projects together. And for me, it keeps things alive. Organizations like a municipality, people don't think of a city like a business, but it has to run like a business, right? What are their goals? Do you ever go to a city and you're like, man, it didn't look like this 10 years ago? Because there's probably someone that thought of how are we going to get the people to move here? What's going to be attracted to them? Is it going to be employment? Can they afford to live here? What kind of housing do we have here? What kind of housing do we want here? What do we want our community to look like? What is important to the people that live here now, right? What's important to the stakeholders and all that? That's what a strategic plan is to municipality. And it's not about controlling the community. It's about, help making it grow. We do that in our lives also. I mean, you want to lose weight? Guess what? You probably want to put a plan together, or you want to hire a trainer or get an app for that. Doing business with no strategy is no different. It's like just being out there and kind of doing your thing and then hoping that, the shit that you threw to the brick wall actually sticks. That's also part of marketing, by the way. It's literally no different, except there's a lot more testing and a lot more tracking. And if you're smart, you do things with those testing. Life, God, the universe, they don't give a shit about your plan or your strategy. And when it comes to business, every business owner tells me this, like, well, things happen and I can't just plan or have a strategy, but you really need a guideline. So for me, I just wanted to explain to you a little bit why and how I got into it and why I became obsessed with it. Because I am able to go back to some communities in Michigan in particular, and I get to share with or just see like, God, this place used to be a shithole and now it looks really nice. Or recognize like where I used to, hate to live growing up is actually a really cool place. Kalamazoo, Michigan, I haven't been there in years. My mom lives there and I actually do go there, and I haven't been downtown in years, but I kind of envy the downtown life that people have in Kalamazoo now. Like when we lived there, it was just starting. And I say we because this is like me 20 plus years ago. And to me, it was cool then. Right. But like, and I don't know. I digress. It's what directs the path. There are some person out there like me that went to the community and went to all the different groups for the city, planning commission and all those things. And they helped come up with the makeup of how their communities wanted to be. Your business, your life is no different. And because of that, and because life just throws shit in our path all the freaking time, you kind of need two plans. You need the plan that is your regular strategy, your proactive strategy. I used to talk about this a lot. And that's the one that after you do your SWOT, and we'll go into this and what that means. And after you know what your KPIs are, which is your cost per inquiry. And after you know what the cost is per your actual acquisition of that customer, you can actually put your plan together. And it's not even just your plan, but your budget, because that's one of the things that people ask me the most. How much should I spend in my advertising, Patricia? Well, we'll get into that because it's different for every single person. So, to recap, you want to lose weight? You need a strategy. You want to start a business? Guess what? You need a strategy. You want to grow a business? It would be really nice if you had a strategy. Otherwise, you're just winging along the way. And it makes it really hard for people. For someone like me in particular, I can be a little bit of a control freak. I'm also a business owner that also knows that whenever I have a plan, my life gets in the way, or business gets in the way, or incidentally, clients get in their own ways with things, and you have to go with the flow. You might have a business that's weather dependent, and you need a strategy on top of the other strategy. Because what if Google goes down over a day? That happened a couple months ago. Patricia, stop talking about strategies. What in the heck is one? And how do I know if it's right for me? So I do them, I put them together, and I don't just put them together. I look at the business as a whole. Not just their marketing, but you want to look at your competition. Where do you stand in your marketplace? What resources do you have? What resources do you not have? The real. And the clients that have strategies, and that get them, even if we have to adapt and do reactive strategies on top of those, they are the ones that are successful. The ones that want to skip forward and just say, and this might trigger some people. What do I need to do to get in, just get the business in? Even myself sometimes have to recognize that you need to slow it down and look at what your strengths are, your weaknesses, what opportunities out there, and what threats. Sometimes one of the biggest threats to you and your business is yourself. And that is when we become smarter and we look at those weaknesses in the real, and we identify solutions to them. It might be that you're not the best interfacing person with people, but you're in a customer service-based business. Well, maybe the solution to that is hire some other people to interface with all the people for you and automate the things that require you to interact, because that is just it. So it just forces you to look at the real of your business, and it forces honesty, right? Otherwise, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to go on Grok or ChatGPT, and as great those are, and you're going to put in, how can I have a marketing strategy? And it's going to give you all the things. And it's going to be a bunch of bullshit that sounds like everyone else's. And it's not going to do well, and you're not going to be authentic. And maybe you don't care. For the long term, you should care. So I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to help you and to tell you the truth. And to get into the how do we actually do that? Because people want to talk about it, but they don't want to do it. So over time, it's testing time, looking at what's successful. What are some of the failures that you've had, not just with running your business, but with your actual marketing, right? And as you're doing those things, they need to adapt and change. But if you're not going to do those things and you're just going to keep it and you're just going to have a plan, you're going to keep it rigid, it's going to evolve for you, right? Because, someone that put their marketing strategy together 15 years ago, 20 years ago, did not expect Meta to come into play the way that Meta did and to change the game the way that it did. Or even Google Ads. I mean, when I was selling radio advertising 20 plus years ago, Google was not in my space of competition. Like, I can't even imagine now trying to compete with those other things. And, the companies that I used to work with heavily relied on radio advertising for their marketing and television advertising for their marketing and print advertising for their marketing. And yes, we still do some of those things, but most of their time and their budget are spent on areas and things that literally didn't exist 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because they had a strategy. They didn't necessarily all change who they were as a brand, as a company. Maybe their services had to adapt. How they had to communicate definitely had to adapt. And they're the ones that still survive. I'm sick of talking about fucking Nike, but they're still around. Why do people spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on shoes? I do not do that. I am a big fan of TJ Maxx, just so you know. TJ Maxx wants to get a hold of me. They're welcome to. Love me some discounts. So yeah. More corporate fluff, right? So I mentioned some things and I was like, key performance indicators. Well, what the fuck is that? All right. So a key performance indicator is just a really fancy way of saying, is this working? Look at your cost per lead, and it's your cost per customer. And if you don't know those things, and you don't know what your website conversions are, then you need to do some homework. Maybe you can start at an easy place of what leads come through your website or how many phone calls that you're coming in. But if you're not able to take how much you're spending and find out where those people are actually coming from and make some sort of a mathematical equation of, okay, I'm spending, you're doing it wrong, right? If you don't know, you can do two things. You can just gamble it, because honestly, any advertising is, how much can I afford to gamble on this? You're a brand new business, you just started out. Most of them that are really small don't come out with a marketing and advertising budget out the gate. It's shocking. It's like the number one thing you need. Nobody knows who the hell you are. So why not say, okay, I'm going to take some budget, and it's like if you went to the casino, you probably will lose it, but you might not, right? And you have to be conservative with it because you just started. But if you've been in business for several years, and these are most of the people that I work with now, thank God, honestly, because the other way is super hard. And that's why a lot of those people don't end up surviving, because they didn't actually put together a budget or make that their priority, and their businesses started running them and they weren't running their businesses, and they didn't even conceptualize the fact that they might even need a plan at some point to keep them on the track. And when you're in survival mode, you're not in planning mode. So that's even an unfair thing to say. The businesses that do get it, no, well, I know that this customer cost me X amount of dollars. And they look at everything they've spent on marketing, what their resources have cost, how much time it took them. And they divide it by how many customers they've gotten in that X amount of time. Professionals out there, when I was in radio, they used to tell people 20%. And that's absurd, honestly. I mean, unless you're like a huge brand, you need to spend that. I mean, that's literally a fifth of what you're bringing in. If you can afford to do 7, maybe 10, if you're in trying to keep up mode, if you're in I need to grow mode, then yeah, 10 to 15%, right? But don't put your business in a place of risk when you're trying to worry about keeping the lights on or keep your payroll going and all these other things. Coming up with a plan and strategy should also help you come up with that too. Growth doesn't always mean hiring on more people or adding more services. It might mean contracting out or adding more XYZ. So knowing that that's going to be in your plan, don't always assume that your first gut is where you're going to end up spending your money. I have a handful of clients that every few years try to add on a new service. I don't know if it was really in their plan or not. I think it was more of opportunity. And had it been in the plan, they probably would have had things on the back end done a little bit better, meaning the team and the infrastructure to handle those services and things in place. Some of them were successful, some of them were not. But looking at the sidelines of those businesses, I can tell you that, yeah, there could have been some planning maybe a year or so out in advance for this to just prepare to get your other services going a little bit tighter before you add on another service. Perhaps partner with another company. That way you're not taking on the brunt of that. So I get kind of into this, like super nerdy about this stuff. I've been doing it so long. And what happens is just like my own business. So you feel a little bit better about yourself. I do this too. I have a plan. When I started my business, I came up with a business plan. It was beautiful. And guess what? It changed completely because I'm not even doing 2 of the services that I set out to do. I actually had to do the opposite. I had to cut back. In that time, I added other services, but I didn't take on those things myself. When I did take those things on myself, I was not doing a great job. I was doing a good job, okay. And the last couple years, I feel like I've done a really great job, okay, with a lot of different things. And I've also done an even better job of hiring additional help of people that have that expertise. I get friends that constantly ask me, like, you should show me how to do a podcast. And I'm like, no, you should hire Patrick to do your podcast or someone, because that's what I did. I didn't have the bandwidth to figure it out on my own. And I don't have any problem telling people that. I'm still playing around and working on it, but it wasn't in my plan. Now, let's talk about Patricia's marketing company and how I relayed that to my strategy. When I started my business back in January of 2019, this was not in it. The podcast was part of like the dream, but it was not part of the marketing strategy. And honestly, it is now. I'm using this as a platform to get to know you. And to me, that's marketing. My turnover rate might take years. It may take me over to 1,000, maybe more, to a customer, to acquire a customer. And that customer to me might mean just as much to me as it would a service-based business, which, by the way, service-based businesses spend anywhere from $150 to $500 to $1,000 per customer, depending on what it is that they're looking for. If you're putting in a heat pump system, you're probably going to put close to $150 to $500. And to acquire that person over time, it doesn't take overnight. If you're a home builder, yeah, you might be spending $1,000, $1,500 or more to get that one customer. But what does that customer mean to you? So back to my other point, to go back nerdy, and then I will close it up, I promise. My 2-sided answer to the question is you could just AI it and ask, and it will tell you this is the percentage you should be spending on your budget. And it may or may not be real. And if you're me, you're going to look at your history and find out what was successful and try some things out and test model it. And maybe whatever your targeted cost is will help you. But it is not an exact science. It's never been an exact science. You might go out one day and do absolutely nothing and acquire a customer. Or you might be like me on the beach in Jamaica one day, and I think that trip probably cost us like $5,000, smoking a cigar, drinking a bourbon, and the marketing VP of Citizen sits next to you and wants to smoke a cigar. And all of a sudden, you're doing their graphics. So you just don't know. You have no idea where your customers and all this stuff are going to come from. But at least you can give yourself a little bit of sanity and clarity when shit goes all over the place and you feel like, man, my business is running me and I need to start running it. Where do I go? Instead of having to start from the beginning every single time, you have this plan that you can go back to, which you should be quarterly anyway, right? And then you can actually get yourself back on track or find out that you've been on track or maybe you're even ahead of schedule. We're going to continue this so that you don't continue to yawn. And I hope you had fun. I actually had a lot of fun talking about this. This is what I do. So the more we do, the more you will learn. And if you have some topics that you'd love to hear from me on with my experience, I would love to run on. Have a great day, y'all.